Are you a frustrated parent who desires the best for your child? Do you have a child who is underachieving in college and prolonging his or her college education and causing you financial hardship? Do you wish your child was better prepared for a future and life after college? Sadly, today's college education is bankrupting many families' hopes and dreams for their students' future. These are common concerns shared by many hardworking parents at the ever-increasing costs of college education. Many parents are also concerned because their children cannot swiftly and quickly complete their degree programs. We have an expert here with us today who will provide solutions to these pressing questions. Dr. Daryl Green is a management strategist and college professor. He has helped thousands with lectures, seminars, and columns. Dr. Green provides motivation, guidance, and training for leaders at critical ages and stages of their development. He has over 20 years of management experience and has authored several nationally recognized books. Dr. Green has been noted and quoted in some prominent media organizations, such as USA Today, American Urban Radio, The Bev Smith Show, BET, The Halloran Hill Show, and Ebony Magazine. Thank you for being here with us, Dr. Green.
I appreciate being here.
Your book, Job Strategies for the 21st Century, talks about how we assist college students during this economic turbulence. So would you say, is it hopeless for these millions of parents with college-age students if we look at the economic crisis today?
I'm optimistic. I think parents should be encouraged. I think right now it looks gloomy, but according to a study by the U.S. Labor Report, between 2008 and 2018, there are going to be about 15 million jobs added. And if you think about by 2018, they're looking at approximately 152 million jobs. So you should be happy about that. Now, as we say that, we have about 15 million people unemployed. So, and with the downfall of 2008, people can be a little depressed about that. But I'm very optimistic. I think that we can plot a course. We can look at some opportunities. So I'm upbeat. I think we can make something happen. But I just think if you do the same things you always do, you'll get the same response. So let's do something different.
Right. What is the state of the employment picture over the next few years? What do you see will happen?
Globalization is upon us. That at one time Americans were isolated. You think about General Motors, General Electric, all those dynamic companies, people had a good earned wage. But because of globalization and technology, people are going to struggle because if we saw what's happening in Europe, we're all interrelated. So one of the things that we have to look also is companies are going toward emerging markets. Looking at third world countries and trying to get more profitability. So that's one of the things that we look at. And one of the things that because of all these ramifications, companies are outsourcing. Basically what they're doing, they're taking their non-core functions. Say we go back to the General Motors model. General Motors making the actual parts, the production of those, send them abroad, the labor is a lot cheaper. And so what that has done has been a domino effect to Americans. So what you're looking at is, I would say now we're looking at the age of the part-time worker, that according to a last USA study, people are working like 33 hours on average a week. So that's not enough to have benefits.
That's not full-time.
That's not full-time, and so people are working more to make ends meet. I know you hear stories about people working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet, and that's what we're looking at right now. So on the short term, there's going to be struggle. There's going to be a little bit of hardship because companies, this whole concept of job creation, companies are not in the business of creating jobs. Companies are in the business of making a profit. And if by chance people have jobs, that's great. But companies are really focusing on the end point, and that's what we're seeing today. So this whole human capital thing is really challenging companies that have a social responsibility to do better. So the economic picture on the short term could be considered a little gloomy. A little bit of cloudy days ahead for America.
So for recent graduates, college age students, where is the disconnect between college age students who just graduated and the employers out there?
That's a great question that parents would like to ask the administrators at the universities, where they see the cost of education rise every year. I have the fortunate opportunity every year to attend different colleges and universities. And one of the things that I find out in terms of looking at the employer, so let's take the employer. So again, the employer's main objective is making a profit. What are employers looking for? Well, employers are looking for people who are self-starters. They're looking for people who can solve problems, who are great communicators, all those attributes. And for the most part, as we look at studies and reports and analysis, employers are saying they can't find skilled people. So there's a skill shortage. Mm-hmm. There's a young man, the author's name is Peter Capella. He wrote a book, Why Good People Can't Find Jobs. And actually he has been following companies and organizations. And what he has concluded is that really organizations have set unrealistic expectations for their prospective employees, that they have driven down low wages. They have used software programs that when they poll or try to get good people, and they get maybe 25 applicants, well, they try to weed those individuals out through the software. And so those are some of the issues that they face. And so that's really one of the issues in dealing with the employers. Some of them are setting unrealistic expectations. But then what I have to admit to you, it's a buyer's market. You have all this experience, and companies are looking for experience. So take a young person that's coming out of college. Maybe they have a 4.0. They have a 4.0, and you take an individual that's been co-oping every year since they've been a freshman, probably has a GPA of 2.7. A company's going to look at that 2.5 person with all the experience better. And I mentioned about the 15 million people. A lot of those individuals are highly skilled. You have people who have doctorate degrees, people who have 20 or 30 years experience. They still can't get a job. And so companies, or we call in the old days, they're being very picky, very selective in who they choose. So that's really the dynamics in dealing with the employers. So they're looking for the perfect employee. And for every one job, maybe there are 20,000 applicants. And so they're going through a process of weeding people out. Now about that student. Talking to maybe the juniors and seniors, I find a lot of the students are just not prepared for corporate world. They figure, hey, I've gone to school 4 or 5 years. I studied hard. I did all the things that it took to make it. Why can't I get a job? That's one of the concerns that they have. Another thing that they think about is that if I finish that degree, that the job will come. And that's, again, kind of being unrealistic about it, because we know about all the competition. Again, take that engineer, I'm an engineer by degree, take that engineer that graduated from University of Tennessee or MIT, they're not only competing against those individuals in that state, they're competing against people in India and China. And so the competition grows longer. So, and the other thing is, they're not mentally tough. You mentioned about your experiences growing up, and some of my experiences is that a lot of the students are not prepared for the hardship of getting a job.
Reality,
you're right.
Well, you say that employers are looking, they're looking for skilled people, for self-starters, but there's a skill shortage. So for these students that are getting ready to graduate and are expecting to find a job, what can universities and parents, or any academic institution do to better prepare these students?
Great point. Let's deal with the parents. First of all, my baby boy, baby girl starts college. My first thing is to set expectations for them. You need to get out of school in 4 years. Set that up front. And you need to, and what I'm telling parents, I'm telling students, that your freshman year, you need to be thinking about graduating. They need to be need to be co-oping. They need to be looking at summer employment. And one of the things that I'm finding is when I go to these universities, that a lot of the students, even the juniors and seniors, do not know what a career center is. They do not know what a placement center is. Have never been to one. And they wait till their senior year, and then they go to the placement office. They haven't built any relationship with anybody, and they hope to get a job. But again, the most critical thing that employers want is experience. So that student, again, the parents should be encouraging that individual, but also mental toughness. We have a lot of helicopter parents. And I've talked to a lot of professors, and you have parents that are trying to go to school with their children, trying to solve all the problems for them, even doing their homework. Be their children's best friend. And they need to let those young people mature. So that's really critical. But gaining those experiences. Now, you might say, you know what, that sounds good, Professor Green or Dr. Green. But I'm sitting here, I'm a senior, I came home for the summer, I don't have a job. I've just graduated and don't have a job. What I would tell them, they have that mental toughness that if I can't get a job, then I'm gonna fake it and that I have a job. So I'm gonna get up every morning. I'm gonna go volunteer somewhere. I'm gonna go volunteer 8 hours. I've actually seen it several times with my students. Well, I've told them to volunteer. I've done it myself, and I've seen the volunteering leap into something else. The other thing is I would encourage young people, young adults, college students, is to look at trends. You know, what's the hottest, for the next, I would look at trends over time. And one of the things, the biggest thing is the health industry. You know, people growing old. As much as the changing the makeup and the facelifts, we're growing older. And so I would say the health field. You know, the STEM. The STEM means the science, the technology, the engineering and mathematics. We can't get enough students to go into those functions. Now, here's one of the other things, and I always get this glazed look by students. I said, if you want to be employed, you want to assure yourself to be employed, you need to learn a foreign language. And they laugh at me. There's a joke that says, if you know 3 languages, you're trilingual. If you speak 2 languages, you're bilingual. If you speak 1 language, you're American. And so I had my daughter just this summer went to Italy, and I was asking. I said, what was some of the great things that you saw in Italy? I said, what was one of the things that shocked you? And she mentioned just about Americans that they only can speak 1 language. That we're so limited. And so you just think even a janitor. A ditch digger, if they could learn a language, Asian language, the Pacific Asian continent, it's going to be a major player in the future. China, Japan, Korea, these are all major powers. If they could commit to learning the language. Now, you're in school. Why not commit yourself to learning those languages? And what I'm finding out, that I go back to the mental toughness, that students, a lot of students are unwilling to make that sacrifice, of learning the language. And I told you that is a great opportunity, because a lot of companies are looking at people understand cultures. Understanding cultures, building those relationships are important. Again, building relationships. Students need to build relationships with the professors, the administrators, and a lot of times people say it's not what you know, it's who you know. In the 21st century, with 25,000 applicants to every one job, there needs to be some leverage and chip. Now, certainly you got to be competent, but it gives you an opportunity. If you're building relationships, it gives you opportunities to go on top of the pile, and that's what I encourage. Some of the elements I encourage in terms of helping these young people get the jobs.
Now, you mentioned mental toughness and setting standards. Now, this comes, with parents and professors and administrators, and you can only do so much. But we live in a different era where the generation is called the millennials, where Facebook takes so much, where YouTube is where you want to be, where your smartphone is smarter than you, unfortunately. How does this hurt you and of your chances obtaining employment? Because I'm one of those people that grew up in that phase without the internet, with the internet, and then with all of this.
That's a great point. I'm gonna back up a little bit and answer that's going to tie into what we're talking about now. What you asked me about, what can the institution do? The institution, some of the professors that I know, that students know, they've been teaching the same way for the last 50 years. And so they need to change their teaching style to meet the demands of this technology-savvy generation. And we talked about the internet in terms of doing be more contemporary, field trips, using social media, blogging. And I try to do that for my students. But how does an individual say, how does social media, how can it hurt me? But one of the things, again, I mentioned that a lot of companies, the main goal in some human resources department is to reduce risk. They reduce risk by weeding people out. So one of the things, I talked to one HR person, that what they do is they do a search. They type in your name, and your name comes up. And they look and find out what are you doing. So they look at Facebook, what's going on Facebook, what's going on in Twitter. They look at those areas, and it's not only what's on your Facebook page, but they're also concerned about alliances. You know, and in organizations, agencies that have a federal clearance, they're concerned about your connections, your relationships.
Of course.
And it goes back to your brand. So if they're seeing that they're looking at pictures on your Facebook page, and every single picture is a picture of you being drunk or half naked, then it hurts your brand. You know, and a lot of times when I go to universities, I sit and I talk to students. Before they even get into that room, I'm going to the cafeterias, I'm going to the student unions, I'm just walking around, you know, especially small schools, and I'm reading the newspaper. I'm trying to learn what is the environment of the institution and how those students cope. So employers are even interviewing you before you even get into the door. And so I think that's very important that students know that you're being observed on all fronts, online and offline.
So Google your name every so often.
Google your name
to see what comes up. Yep.
And if it's not your name, if your name is Joe Blow, and and people and you getting bad things, you maybe need to do your own. Be aware of those individuals. I had a young lady say, "Well, I'm not." There was a porn star she was mentioning that had her name, and so she had to, I think, LinkedIn to identify who she is separated. So I would say one of my main things is I would get you on, go to GoDaddy or some other domain name. Get your name.
Get your name.
Own your name. So the people can't put things on there that doesn't represent you. And in cases that you have other individuals that are doing negative things with the same name, you need to, when employers say, well, I went to your Facebook page and your Google page and it said this and this, you need to have an explanation what happened and why that's not you. So it's very important to protect your brand.
Correct. Let's discuss your book for a little.
Okay.
Job Strategies for the 21st Century, How to Assist Today's College Students During Economic Turbulence. It seems like it's such a broad subject. Sure. How did you come about researching and developing the concepts for this book?
Well, Rian, I mentioned that one of the opportunities that I have, I go visit universities and colleges every year. And I was going to the classrooms, talking to students about job strategies, and I saw such a big disconnect. Students were asking, in terms of how do I dress? Some of the students would come to school, come into an interview, not properly dressed. Not knowing, I'll interview you. I say, tell me a little bit about my company. And you tell me, I don't know, I hadn't researched it. So a lot of students are just not prepared. And we look at it in terms of maturity. They're not mature. And one of the things that I discovered is, it's just like having kids. I have 3 kids of my own with my wife. And if I tell them, you know what, you need to dress a certain way, they kind of give me the hand. They don't really listen. They act like they're listening, but they're really not listening to me. A lot of professors, a lot of administrators are saying the same thing that I'm talking about in job strategy for the 21st century. But because I've written a book, because I've been interviewed on primetime media, they listen to me. So I thought it was a good mechanism to kind of share some emerging trends or some tips to help. Because I have nephews, I have nieces, I have my own kids, and unless they change the strategies, they can't use the same strategies that helped me get a job in 1989. Right now, you have, again, a lot of barriers to overcome. A lot of them don't have the experience. And so you have to tell them, even as a freshman, even out of high school, protect your brand. Your brand is how you're perceived. You need to protect that. You need to make sure you don't do anything in the short term that's going to help you, that's going to hurt you in the long term. And we look at so many people who are incarcerated or even deceased made better decisions. I believe that if we can improve the quality of our decisions, we can improve our life. And so that really goes into what I'm writing in Job Strategy, trying to give them some practical tips and trying to improve their lives as college students.
So with protecting one's brand, after you've protected your brand, what would you say are the 10 job strategies that can propel a person from unemployed to employable?
Wow, how much time do we have? Do we have an hour to talk about that?
Give us two.
I'll give you a few.
Two.
Okay, I'll give you a few. First of all, I mentioned finding a job is going to be tough. It's gonna be difficult. It's going to drive you to the point of losing your mind. So that comes of being mentally tough. Mentally tough, like you see the basketball players, LeBron James, or those individuals, they work through the difficulty to gain strength. And so by being mentally tough, you can say, okay, you closed the door on me once, but I'm going to pursue these other opportunities. So that means maybe applying to 100 jobs every month. That's what I call, that's mental tough. The other one is, again, building your brand. How you dress, how you speak,
how you stand out.
That goes all to your brand. And so right now, you have to protect your brand. And so everyone wants to be outstanding. This comes from one of my pastors. Said everybody wants to be outstanding, but no one wants to stand out.
Right.
And in the 21st century, you have to stand out. You have to set yourself apart, having those unique characteristics that stand out. And that's what I talk about in terms of building your brand. Good listening skills is important. And again, experience is really the key things in doing that.
Even if it's just volunteering.
Volunteering is experience.
Right.
That
matter
will
what.
help you out.
And I think a lot of people have a misconception that volunteering doesn't necessarily help them just because it's not a paycheck, but that's not.
Well, one of the things I try to tell educators in universities and colleges is that we have to make a transition. From 2009, my MBA students have given 1,500 hours of consulting time. They're going into organizations that need help. Understand, it's not about me. It's about the employer.
Right.
And I've seen them get employed. But a lot of times in universities and colleges, they say community. You got to get your community hours. You got to go to the American Red Cross. You got to do, and kids are just turned off by that.
Right.
But when you can show them, this is relevant. You're trying to get to this job. You're trying to get to this opportunity, this better life. Consulting hours. Again, it goes back to universities need to change how they teach. And I see it every day. They need to change that dynamics in terms of being competitive.
So you say for one job, there are 25,000 applicants.
Could be more. I mean, I was just using an example.
And then you say, for one person, there should be 100 applications.
Yeah.
So my next question is, so where are these jobs you're talking about, the 100 applications, and then we have the, so many per one. So where are they? Who is hiring? Yeah. And how, as an individual, how do I go get them? If I'm competing with 25,000 others, but I need to put 100 in.
That's the magical question. In the book, Job Strategy for the 21st Century, I actually outline the top companies that are hiring. I look at the status, the statistics from previous years. You look at some of those companies and look at their hiring trends. So that's one example. I always say, go west, young man. I always try to stand out. And again, the federal government, of course, the local states are downsizing. But even if you go back, people advocate, they talk about President Ronald Reagan. But even under his administration, there was about 1 million federal jobs.
Right.
So those opportunities, again, science, your technologies, your STEM, very hot area, your medical, your health fields, very hot areas you go into. But then what I found, and again, it's my top 10, is there are so many students that are not flexible. I want to go to New York. I want to go, they call Atlanta, hot Atlanta. I want to go to LA. if you're in the medical field, if you go to those underserved areas, rural communities, that might be an opportunity. And when I first started my corporate life experience, I went 3,000 miles away from home in Washington State. Didn't even know anybody initially. So I'm saying you have to make a lot of sacrifices and really
be open to change.
That's correct.
Looking at who you know, you mentioned earlier something about who you know and what you know. So how would, because I agree with you, it is all about who you know. That one person's only what you know. So how can your old classmates, your acquaintances, there's a lot of card giving, card trading. How can they help you obtain employment?
One of the things I do with each class that I do, I have the students interact. I say, tell them where you work at. I tell them network. That's your networking opportunities. You have people that, but one of the biggest things that companies don't want to take a chance. They don't want to risk, and so they want to reduce their risk. So Rianne says, well, I know Daryl Green. I've worked with him. I've done some student projects with him. He's an outstanding student. That gives them opportunity. I also tell students to go beyond just that physical connection. I tell them one of the first things you should do is go to LinkedIn.com. You put in a profile, not just any profile, but a profile that accents your personal brand. You need to do that. And from there, join various groups. Now, this is one trick I always do. If I look at the groups, say an academic group, and there's a university that I want to be a part of, say like a Lincoln Memorial University. I would go to that group that has all academics, and I would see where those deans or those individuals were, and I would connect with them. Now on LinkedIn, you can only connect where there's a relationship. Now in a group, you have that connection, and so that's one of the ways. Answer the questions, be an asset to that discussion forum. That's one of the ways you can become. Again, you got alumni, you're part of high school, you graduate from high school, college. Those are all good. I call them strategic alliances. A strategic alliance is not where you're trying to use that person, but you're trying to fulfill the need of that individual. And in doing so, that person is going to reciprocate. Again, the golden rule. Trying to treat people like you want to be treated. So you're looking out for that person's best interest, that person's looking out for your best interest. So strategic alliances is the word of the 21st century now.
But for some people who will spend a lot of their years trying to actually stay competitive, you say there are people with 20, 30 years experience, but they're still trying to stay competitive, age groups are changing, work skills are changing, the commitment to your job is changing, the way we deal with each other is changing. So if you are trying to compete for a job and you're trying to stay competitive, how do you do that? And how do you stay competitive when you're unemployed so you can hopefully one day gain employment?
Well, I think I have quite a few friends who sometimes at periods are unemployed. You have to be mentally tough. I think you have to fool yourself that you have a job, and I think you have to go, because you can become very depressed, by yourself, watching TV every day, and not having a job. There's something about having a job that builds self-esteem. So there's something to be said about that.
So is it safe to say volunteering is a form of networking because you don't know who you might bump into while you volunteer?
But it's another way to build your brand. But also I believe in being a tent maker. I believe, and I've done this several times, you take a job that maybe you're not all that happy about, but you can take care of your family, your responsibilities. At the same time, you're building for your future. So you're taking maybe a specialized class, you're going out and you start I'm encouraging people to start your own businesses. Build those relationships. So you have a job that's taking care of your basic needs, but then you have the vision to move out by doing that.
In a time where people are looking for employment, just any employment, regardless of if they get the employment that they don't necessarily are happy with, like you're saying, but regardless of them having employment or not, how do people still manage, or what would you suggest for people to keep a positive attitude, especially during the economic downturn. I can't find a job, or hey, I have this job that's at least 30 hours, better than not having nothing, but you know, bills are bills.
Yeah.
And things still cost money.
Yeah.
How do you stay upbeat during this time?
Well, I think it goes back to, positive affirmations. I think a belief in something higher than yourself. I mean, that's what I espouse to. But building a strong network. You know, one of the things I encourage, you know, if somebody's always negative, that can tear you down. Yeah. And if you're trying to launch out and do something positive, a lot of times that can hurt you in terms of that, because it sets the stage for you becoming having self-pity and self-doubt. So building that support network, have a belief in something other than yourself, because I believe that I'm here for a reason, that our interview has a purpose, that those frustrated parents and disgusted students, we can make a difference. That's why I wrote the book, Job Strategies for the 21st Century.
Thank you so much, Dr. Green. I would like to also let you all know that Job Strategies for the 21st Century, How to Assist Today's College Students During Economic Turbulence, written by Dr. Daryl D. Green and William Bailey, MBA, can be found on Amazon.com as well as Barnes & Noble. Thank you so much.
Thank you.